Ever feel like you're facing impossible odds? Like completely outmatched, no way to win?
Happens to the best of us.
Well, today we're diving deep into a source that just might, give you a whole new perspective on those situations.
Oh, it's going to be good.
We're talking ancient Chinese military strategy, specifically The Art of War by Master Taigong.
Now, that might seem like a very specific, very old text.
Right.
But the principles in it, surprisingly relevant. All sorts of modern challenges. Business negotiations, even personal conflicts, you name it.
Let's put ourselves in the shoes of King Wu, okay?
Okay.
Ruler back in ancient China, facing a much larger, much better equipped enemy army. Got him cornered near a body of water, troops are hungry, options are limited.
Talk about pressure.
High pressure situation. This scenario, by the way, it's described in chapter 48 of The Art of War. Perfect example of how strategic thinking, it make all the difference.
Oh, absolutely. And King Wu, he was lucky enough to have a brilliant strategist advising him.
Oh, yeah, who is?
A guy named Jiang Taigong.
All right. And
what Taigong came up with is known as the Leopard strategy.
Leopard strategy. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Right.
So what did the strategy entail?
Well, first thing Taigong advised, and this is bold, was to feign a retreat.
Wait, really? Run away?
You make the enemy think King Wu's forces are weak, crumbling, the whole bit.
But wouldn't that just make them, an easy target?
That's what they think,
yeah.
Right. And that's exactly the point. It's all about perception. Appear vulnerable. You lure the enemy into a trap.
Draw them out, make them overconfident. So, in a business negotiation, sometimes revealing a perceived weakness
can actually give you the upper hand.
Yeah.
Exactly. They overestimate their position. Could even make a mistake because of it.
Interesting.
But King Wu, understandably, he had concerns about this whole risky maneuver.
Yeah, I bet. What if the enemy sees through the act?
Exactly. What if they flank his retreating troops? Total chaos.
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. So what did Taigong suggest?
He had a plan for that too. Suggested using some subtle tactics. Even bribery, if necessary.
Bribery.
To influence the enemy's messengers, their scouts.
Okay, bribery. That feels like a pretty unorthodox approach, even for, ancient warfare.
It might seem unconventional, but Taigong believed in using all available tools.
I see.
Including what we might call psychological warfare.
That.
By feeding the enemy carefully crafted information, you can create confusion, disrupt their communication. You're essentially manipulating their whole perception of what's happening.
It's like planting seeds of doubt, making them question their own, intelligence strategies.
Precisely. And this reinforces a key principle from The Art of War. Know your enemy. Even more importantly, know how to influence their thinking.
Makes sense.
But it gets even more interesting. King Wu then brings up another problem.
Oh boy. This enemy is starting to sound pretty savvy. What did they do?
He wonders, what if the enemy, anticipating a trap, they refuse to fully engage? What if they decide, all right, we're going to send out small, harassing units just to test King Wu's defenses, wear down his troops?
War of attrition, trying to chip away at resources, morale, without risking a full-on confrontation.
Exactly. Classic tactic. And this would put King Wu in a really tough spot. I mean, his troops, they're already hungry, demoralized.
Right.
But of course, Taigong had a counter strategy, a brilliant one, I might add. He proposes dividing the army into two main formations.
Oh, all right.
The assault formation and, this one's much more intriguing, the bird cloud formation.
All right, let's break these formations down. What was the assault formation all about?
Assault formation was designed for solid defense.
Okay.
Think of it like a fortress. Holds a critical position, absorbs the enemy's attacks. The purpose was to hold the line, withstand the pressure, and buy time.
Buy time for
the bird cloud formation to maneuver.
Okay. So if the assault formation is holding steady, what makes this bird cloud formation so special?
Imagine this. Flock of birds, scattering, then reforming in the sky, constantly shifting, adapting to the wind.
I'm picturing it.
That's the essence of the bird cloud formation. It's dynamic, fluid. It's used primarily for chariots and cavalry, designed to strike quickly, harass the enemy from multiple directions, and vanish before they can react.
Almost sounds like a guerrilla warfare tactic.
It is. It's about keeping the enemy guessing, preventing them from concentrating their forces.
And ultimately,
chipping away at their confidence, their morale.
Okay, this bird cloud formation, it's really capturing my imagination. Sounds incredibly effective, but also incredibly difficult to pull off.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It relies on highly trained, disciplined troops.
Right.
Troops who can operate with a certain degree of, well, autonomy.
They need to be able to respond to commands, but also improvise, like react to changing circumstances on the fly.
Exactly. It's not just about blindly following orders.
It's about like individual initiative within a larger strategic framework.
You got it.
That sounds a lot like, successful teams today, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Any field.
Yeah.
Business, sports, even creative endeavors. That ability to adapt, to think on your feet, make independent decisions, but within a shared vision, that's what sets successful teams apart.
We've covered a lot of ground already. We've talked about the Leopard strategy, this brilliant idea of feigning a retreat. And we've even, touched on the assault and the bird cloud formations. But how did this all come together to help King Wu in his, seemingly impossible situation?
Well, remember, King Wu, he's outnumbered, undersupplied, trapped near a body of water. The enemy, initially fooled by that feigned retreat, they fall into the ambush. But then, as we discussed, they wise up. They start using those smaller units to harass King Wu's forces.
Okay, so that's where the assault formation comes in, holding the line while the bird cloud units do their thing.
Exactly. Buying time, absorbing the pressure, preventing the enemy from overwhelming King Wu's forces. And meanwhile, those highly mobile bird cloud units, they're causing all sorts of havoc. But the true genius of Taigong's plan lies in the timing of the final strike.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. What happens next?
Well, picture this.
Okay, so we left off with King Wu's forces. They're holding their ground. The bird cloud formation is kind of swirling around, causing chaos.
Yeah.
And the enemy's getting increasingly frustrated.
Right.
So what happens next in this high-stakes game of, ancient warfare chess?
Well, the enemy, they're tempted by what they think are these weak scattered forces, right? And they make a critical mistake.
Oh.
Their main force, they're lured in by these skirmishes. They're so eager to just crush King Wu once and for all. They decide to cross that body of water we were talking about.
So they finally take the bait.
They do.
Walking right into Taigong's carefully laid trap.
Yep. This is where things get interesting.
This is it, huh?
Yet the moment the enemy commits to crossing, they become vulnerable. Their forces are divided, their lines of communication are stretched thin, their focus is narrowed.
It's like the perfect opportunity
For King Wu to strike back.
Exactly. So it's not just about luring them in, it's about waiting for that exact moment, right?
Yeah.
When they're most exposed, when their own momentum works against them.
Precisely. This is where the timing, the coordination of Taigong's strategy really shines. So as that enemy's main force is making their way across, the hidden ambush troops spring into action.
Oh, right. I'd forgotten about them.
They hit the enemy from the rear.
So we've got the ambush troops cutting off the retreat, but what about the bird cloud units?
Right.
What role do they play in this final move?
They're the disruptors, the agents of chaos. While those ambush troops are striking from behind, the bird cloud formation is harassing the enemy's flanks.
Okay.
Launching these swift attacks, then disappearing before the enemy can counter.
Oh, I see.
It's like being attacked by a swarm of bees, you know?
Right. You can't swat them all. And you never know where they'll strike next.
Exactly. It's a coordinated attack, but with an element of, controlled chaos.
Right. Keeps the enemy off balance. They can't regroup. They can't form a cohesive defense.
Yeah, exactly. And the psychological impact, it's devastating. The enemy, they're expecting an easy victory, and suddenly they're facing attacks from every direction.
Oh, wow.
Their communication breaks down, their leadership falters, their carefully laid plans, they just crumble.
Total reversal of fortune, achieved through patience, deception, and that brilliant bird cloud maneuver.
Yeah. It's a textbook example of how to turn a seemingly hopeless situation into a potential victory. But what's truly fascinating is that Taigong's teachings, they go way beyond the battlefield.
You keep saying this.
I do.
So how does an ancient Chinese military strategy apply to, say, a business negotiation?
Think about the elements we've been discussing, right? Understanding your opponent's psychology, using a bit of deception to your advantage, adapting to the changing circumstances, striking at that decisive moment.
It's all relevant.
It's relevant, regardless of the context.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. So, the feigned retreat, sometimes it's actually strategically advantageous to, hold back a little bit, appear less threatening.
Yeah.
In order to, kind of gain a better understanding of your opponent's position.
Exactly. It's about playing that long game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not revealing your full hand too early. You're gathering information while they think they have the upper hand.
Right, right.
And then, like that bird cloud formation, sometimes the most effective approach is to be a little bit agile. unpredictable.
Keep your opponent on their toes.
Precisely. And this can apply to, think about it. Launching a new product in a competitive market, navigating a complex team dynamic, so many things.
Yeah.
But there's another takeaway from Taigong's Leopard strategy, and this one might be even more important.
What's that?
The emphasis on the psychological aspect of conflict.
We touched on this a bit earlier,
right,
with the whole, idea of psychological warfare. But what does that really mean in a modern context?
Taigong understood that winning a battle, it isn't just about physical force.
Right.
It's about breaking your opponent's will, their morale, their belief in their ability to win.
That's powerful.
And that principle, it's just as relevant today as it was centuries ago.
So how do you, break someone's will without resorting to, actual warfare?
It's about understanding their motivations, their fears, their vulnerabilities.
I see.
And you use that knowledge to anticipate their moves, to undermine their confidence, make them doubt their own strategy.
It sounds a little manipulative, to be honest.
It can be, but it doesn't have to be malicious. Think of it more like,
like a chess game.
Exactly. You're not trying to hurt your opponent, but you are trying to outmaneuver them, to anticipate your next move, and to ultimately achieve your objective.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, that means playing these mind games.
Using psychology to gain an advantage.
Right.
Okay, this is all starting to come together, but how do you actually put this into practice? How can we, as everyday people, use these ancient principles to navigate the challenges that we face in our lives?
It starts with awareness. You have to pay attention to the subtle dynamics in any interaction. What are the unspoken motivations, the hidden agendas? What are the fears and the insecurities that might be driving someone's behavior?
So it's about being observant, empathetic, really trying to understand where the other person is coming from.
Exactly. And once you have that understanding, then you can start to anticipate their reactions, their strategies, their potential weaknesses.
So like Taigong?
Like Taigong, you can use that knowledge to your advantage.
I can definitely see how this would be incredibly valuable in negotiations, but how does it apply to, other areas of life?
Okay, let's say you're leading a team, right?
Okay.
And you're trying to get buy-in for a new project. Understanding your team members' motivations, their concerns, their individual personalities, that's crucial.
To building consensus?
Yeah, to getting everyone on board.
Or even in a personal relationship, understanding your partner's needs, their communication style, their triggers.
Right.
That can help you navigate conflicts more effectively and, build a stronger bond.
Absolutely. The principles of the art of war, they're not just about winning battles. They're about understanding human nature and using that understanding to achieve your goals, whatever those goals may be.
So we've talked about the strategic brilliance of Taigong's Leopard strategy, but there's another layer to his teachings that I think is equally fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the ethical dimension.
Yes. The question of when and how to use these powerful tactics. That's something we need to explore further. After all, knowledge without wisdom, that can be a dangerous thing.
We've been unpacking some pretty powerful ideas from the art of war. This Leopard strategy with its framed retreats, bird cloud formations, and all that psychological maneuvering, it's incredibly fascinating.
It is.
But it does make you wonder about the ethical implications.
Right.
Is it okay to use deception even if it's, strategic?
That's a crucial question, and one that Taigong himself grapples with in The Art of War.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He makes it very clear that strategy and morality, they don't always line up perfectly. But he also emphasizes that true victory, it doesn't just lie in winning battles.
It's more than that.
It's about preserving harmony, minimizing harm.
So it's not about winning at all costs.
Yeah.
There's a sense of responsibility that comes with this kind of knowledge.
Absolutely. Taigong believed that the ideal outcome is to achieve your objectives without unnecessary conflict.
Okay.
You win over hearts and minds rather than just crushing your opponent.
So you're not trying to dominate or overpower them.
Right. He even suggests that the best general, the one who can achieve victory without even fighting a battle.
It sounds almost paradoxical. How can you win without fighting?
Think about it this way. If you truly, thoroughly understand your opponent, right, their motivations, their strengths, their weaknesses, you can often find ways to achieve your goals without that direct confrontation. You might be able to negotiate a favorable outcome find that common ground, appeal to their sense of fairness.
Or their desire for like a peaceful resolution.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, the greatest victory is that which requires no battle.
Exactly. And this is where I think the ethical dimension of the art of war becomes even more relevant. Taigong stresses the importance of using these strategic tools wisely.
With a sense of
compassion and a long-term perspective.
Not just winning the current battle.
Right.
You're trying to, preserve relationships, maintain your reputation.
And ultimately create a more harmonious outcome for everyone involved.
Precisely. And this applies to so many situations.
Yeah.
Business negotiations, personal disagreements, you name it. If you approach every conflict as like a zero-sum game,
one person wins, the other loses.
yeah, you're likely to create more animosity, damage relationships in the process.
But if you can find a way to achieve your goals while also considering the other person's perspective, their needs, their desired outcome,
you're much more likely to find a solution that actually benefits everyone in the long run.
It's like that idea of, cooperative competition.
Right, where you're striving for excellence, but you also recognize that the success of others, that doesn't diminish your own achievement. Exactly.
And I think that's one of the most valuable lessons we can take away from the art of war, right? It's not just a manual for winning battles.
Right.
It's a guide to navigating the complexities of human interaction.
With wisdom, with strategy, and with that sense of ethical responsibility. As we kind of wrap up our deep dive into the Leopard strategy, what's one key takeaway you want our listeners to really ponder?
Think about the bird cloud formation as a metaphor for life.
Okay.
It's about being adaptable, flexible, responsive to the ever-changing circumstances around you. Don't be afraid to shift direction, to try new approaches.
To embrace a little bit of strategic chaos.
Exactly. Because sometimes the most effective path to success, it isn't a straight line.
It's a series of unexpected turns, adjustments, and bold maneuvers.
Who knows? You might even surprise yourself with what you can achieve when you embrace a little bit of that bird cloud spirit.
I think that's a great place to leave it. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the art of war and the Leopard strategy.
My pleasure.